this is where it really kind of kickstarted my crypto compliance journey. Because especially in the UK, they were trying to navigate what that framework is going to look like. They were going through the crypto assets regime and the registrations in the UK, and it was a real big shift and uplift from what had been naturally seemed as the Wild West or quite an unregulated environment. So for me, it was really exciting that I could be at the forefront of that and kind of start to work with businesses to kind of grow that out.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sebastian, your host, and you're on the Ship Safely podcast. Today we have Amber Hales, who's the co-founder and Chief Operations and Compliance Officer at Darklake. If you don't know Darklake, it's a privacy-first DEX on Solana, and it's awesome. Amber has spent the last 8 years navigating the front lines of crypto compliance. She's held a bunch of roles. She's been the head of compliance at Pillar and Digital RFQ. She went on to serve as head of risk and compliance at CoinCover, and then later joined Coinbase as a senior compliance analyst. So that's quite the portfolio of companies there to be in the last 8 years in crypto. That's really impressive. Now she's channeling that experience into Darklake, a protocol aiming to make DeFi trading private and MEV resistant by design using zero knowledge cryptography. Amber, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I would like to kick this off with something that we ask all of our guests, and that is, why do you think people should stay and watch the episode, and what should they take away?
Yeah, so ultimately compliance isn't all boring. It's something we all need. But yeah, I think if anything, I'd love to for a takeaway from this is just to give a bit more exposure to Dark Lake. I think right now the market for, especially in privacy on Solana, is heavily saturated. So yeah, anything that we can do to kind of get our name out there and explain a little bit about what we're working on would be great.
I'm really interested in your story because you don't have too many people working in compliance roles and legal roles that jump into crypto full time, right? And especially 8 years ago, right? That's amazing, right? Like I think 8 years ago, it was like everyone working in legal was like, why is the contract smart?
Yeah.
What, and was super interested in hearing how you got into it. So please tell us.
Yeah, so it's actually quite a funny story how I got involved in it. So back in 2017, I was working in a law firm, and at the time, crypto, blockchain, Bitcoin, all of those kind of buzzwords were becoming a massive thing in the city, and I knew that this is something that I kind of wanted to jump on the boat with. So I started going to more meetups at the time. At the time, it was primarily Bitcoin focused ones. But yeah, there was a real shift in the room. People were going from hoodies and hats and just guys meeting up to suits and ties. And this happened over about 6 months. And I knew that, okay, this is something that I don't really want to just sit on. I really want to kind of get involved and understand a bit more about how it's evolving in the UK specifically. So it was there that I left the law firm. I joined a company called Pillar Project. They built EVM wallets. They were quite a very successful ICO at the time. Yeah, 2017, 2018 was ICO-era, right?
Yeah.
So it was very exciting. There was a real buzz in that business. And I was there for about 4 years. And this is where it really kind of kickstarted my crypto compliance journey. Because especially in the UK, they were trying to navigate what that framework is going to look like. They were going through the crypto assets regime and the registrations in the UK, and it was a real big shift and uplift from what had been naturally seemed as the Wild West or quite an unregulated environment. So for me, it was really exciting that I could be at the forefront of that and kind of start to work with businesses to kind of grow that out. So since then, I've worked, yeah, the last 8 years doing crypto compliance. It's not as boring as it sounds. It's actually quite fun because obviously it's like I said, it's shifting. So that takes me to Dark Lake. So I actually met my co-founder Vitor back in 2018 when we were at Pillar. He was also one of the co-founders and the CTO. And Yeah, he had at the time, it was end of 2024. I'd actually just joined Coinbase, but he approached me and said, "Hey, I've got this idea, working with dark pools. We'd previously had experience of that back in 2018 at a company called Token Factory, and we came together and he said, hey, I've just come second place in the DeFi track on the Solana Radar Hackathon. I really want to make this into a business. Let's get it moving." So yeah, I kind of joined a few months later as co-founder to kind of really build out the business side of things from not just an operations perspective, but also just from a compliance and legal standpoint too. And yeah, a year down the road, here we are.
Amazing. That's quite the story, like I think it took a lot of courage back in 2018 to leave a comfortable job at a law firm,
Yeah.
right? And go into crypto, right? I did the transition also in 2018, and people were like legitimately saying that crypto might not exist 1 year from now, right? Like everything might just
Yeah.
collapse. And yeah, look at us 8 years later, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was a crazy time when I said to everyone, "Hey, I'm leaving this law firm to go and work for a crypto company." And at the time, again, no one really even knew what it was. So yeah, that was a bit daunting.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Congratulations for making that step way back when.
Likewise,
And
likewise.
thanks. And sticking around for so long, right? And building, now you're building something amazing. And that's a great segue to my next question. If you can tell our viewers, what is Dark Lake and what's the core problem that it's solving for DeFi?
Yeah, of course. So Dark Lake essentially started off by building a zk-AMM, which was, as you said, MEV resistant by design. But it was after kind of a year of academic research by some big brains in the company. I'm not taking any credit for that whatsoever. That we realized that actually the tech could be so much more powerful than what we'd initially intended it to be. So with this, we kind of pivoted slightly. We still have the decks, but right now, and it's kind of on hold until we actually upload our Ziga, which I'll get into, which will be obviously our V2 post launch, and that will kind of solve the initial liquidity issues that we had. But what we found is, ZK can be traditionally quite slow on Solana. If the variable changes, the statement then isn't true. And to solve this issue, we built our own in-house ZK protocol, which we've called Ziga, where the proof stays valid even if the conditions change. So with this, it's a type of ZK called a malleable zk-SNARK, which is a composable ZK primitive. It's reusable privacy pools that enable fully private and cross-protocol DeFi. So with this, there's a number of different elements of, we're not trying to silo ourselves of being an independent project. We want to enable builders to build on top of us and build this layer without having to redo proofs or sacrificing their composability.
That's super cool. And I would like to, double click on this and just go a bit deeper.
Yeah.
Like people typically know Dark Lake as this privacy first X. But there's many definitions of privacy, I feel like, in Web3, right? What exactly is private? What does it protect? We understand it protects from MEV and front running. Is there anything, specific for the end user that you say, okay, this information is protected? Like, is your, like your account protected, like your account address? What do people see when they look at it? Do they see funds going into the account, but they don't see anything that that account does, and then they see funds going out? Or what exactly is private?
So yeah, we just hide all of the pre-trade data so that bots can't see it. There's a number of different solutions out there, but obviously they do it in a number of different ways. We essentially just use the ZK proofs to hide all of the pre-trade data transaction details, so the amounts, the trade intent, until the execution is finalized. By keeping this private until settlement, again, we prevent the bots from sandwiching, front running the trade. So we're kind of taking away a little bit of the extractable trading risks from the client or from the user, sorry. So hence why we lead with more of that privacy first decks.
Oh yeah, definitely. And if in doing that, the protocol, as I understand, hides the trade size and the direction of the trade and slippage, anything like that. But how do you balance that with, the usability or performance or integrations or even like, regulatory compliance? Because as far as I know, governments would like to see, or like law enforcement would like to see some of those details. And I'm wondering how you balance that out.
Yeah, of course. And I think balance is a really important thing for us. A number of projects, like you said about that, neglect the fact that, a number of regulators don't necessarily mind where you're set up. They mind about who you're serving. And if those people fall into that jurisdiction, i.e., are they a UK consumer? Are they a US consumer? And I think it's really important that teams kind of focus on that a little bit more because I think, the regulators are coming down a bit harder. But again, balance was really important for us. We needed something that was high performance and built for Solana, but also was composable, and where the user privacy is fully preserved. We wanted to also ensure that we had an ecosystem or we had a layer that could interact with the ecosystem. Like I said, there's so many cool projects out there right now, and we're not trying to silo ourselves as a standalone solution, but ultimately find partners to work with where we can make the user experience the best way possible. Something that we're not is a fully encrypted trading platform. Again, there's so many that are coming out now that I am slightly nervous of what the regulators are going to say to them, given the fact that they're completely encrypting the trade. And, we've seen the likes of Tornado Cash and things like that, which have had heavily regulated scrutiny. And we want to make sure that we're not kind of diving into that. We looked at it and said, we're building privacy first solutions using privacy first tech. We're not a privacy platform per se. We're just using the tech to be able to make the user experience as best as possible, but also make sure that we keep these regulators happy.
Yeah, you got to keep the regulators happy. And speaking about that, how are you thinking about this regulatory strategy at Dark Lake? How can privacy and compliance actually go together in crypto?
Yeah, so I mean, it's such a difficult landscape to navigate, right? We've all faced our kind of issues with, like previously, we've set up businesses where the regulators were there wasn't much regulation in that jurisdiction, and then come 2 years down the line, it's heavily regulated as much as centralized exchanges, So it's been a bit of a path, which has been hard to navigate. But I think now that we are coming into more centralized regulatory frameworks, i.e., what's going on in the UK with the regime, Mika, things like that, it's actually becoming a bit more clearer on what we can and can't do. So for us, especially around compliance, we've built our own tech. We can make it as transparent. We can make it as flexible as we need it to be. We're looking at audibility in mind because I know that's becoming a big thing, especially for the US under the Clarity Act. And again, like we said, we're not looking to encrypt the whole entire transaction. We are only hiding from the bots and validators that essential pre-trade data. So yeah, we're kind of keeping it as compliant as we can.
Yeah, no, that's pretty amazing, and useful for traders. There's been a lot of value extracted by MEV bots, so definitely
Yeah,
a needed solution, right?
yeah, and again, I mean, there are a number of different solutions out there, and we're not saying, we want to go against the validators or in any way, shape, or form. We just want to look at it and say, okay, how can we make things a bit more fairer? How can we build fairer markets?
Mhm.
And that's kind of been the shift in the focus of what we've been looking at, because we're not just looking at this, we're looking at other elements of where we can build our ZK and how we can make the whole ecosystem slightly fairer.
Yeah, yeah. And what are some of the biggest technical or regulatory challenges ahead as Dark Lake scales and launches new features like I've heard ZK-based perpetuals?
Yeah, so I'd say for us, we as a business, we kind of recognized our shortcomings, i.e., we are a small team, and we realized that building out new kind of features such as the perp side, even though we have all of the info ready to go, we're too small to launch it on our own, right? So we've actually been approaching different partners saying, hey, Ziga can enable private health checks. We're able to hide the liquidation heat map, and it's incredibly exciting for these perp dexers who are up and coming or feeling that they're trying to essentially go against Hyperliquid in the rat race, right? So it's a feature that we're trying to push right now. So we're kind of taking the regulatory burden off of ourselves per se, because yeah, we are looking for partners who we can work with to build out that side of the business. Because yeah, the tech's ready to go. We just need someone to integrate with. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a technical or regulatory issue for us. It was more of an operational one.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. Well, with that, we've wrapped up all the long form questions, and we reached the rapid fire closeout. Are you ready?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So during these last questions, I'd like to ask you to keep your answers as short as possible, although I know it might be very difficult. The first one is, what's the common or a common misunderstanding about privacy in DeFi?
That's yeah, that the regulators aren't paying attention.
Oh, okay. And the second question is, what's one underrated piece of compliance infrastructure in crypto and Web3?
I would say for people to pay attention to the Clarity Act, which has just come out in the US, which deals with a lot of market manipulation.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Then we have a question from our previous guest, and that question is, what is one thing that you've recently shipped that you're proud of, and maybe most people don't know about it?
So I would say something, not me personally, definitely the Giga Brains in my team. But we recently had Ziga, the preprint went live in the IACR, which is a huge achievement from our perspective, given the fact that there's not too many studying malleable zk-SNARKs at present.
That's a really cool one. And finally, would you like to leave a question for our next guest?
Yeah, go for it. Um, I would say what was the hardest part about we saw a roller coaster of last year, right? So what was the hardest part of 2025 building in the space? And what are you looking forward to in 2026?
So thank you very much. And with that, we've also wrapped the rapid closeout. I would like to ask you if you can share where people can find you on social media, or find and read more about Dark Lake on social media, or websites, anywhere.
Yeah, of course. So the website is darklake.fi. My ex is Duchess of Soul, and my co-founder is Vitor P. So yeah, happy to find us there. And yeah, our Twitter is Dark Lake Fi as well. So yeah, you can find us there.
So you've heard it, folks. Go and check it out. It's an amazing project. Thanks again for being on, Amber.
Thanks, Seb. I appreciate your time.